What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Speaking Sessions podcast. I'm Philip Sessions, your public speaking and communication coach. And today I've got a Waller boy in. He is from my hometown where I grew up. We were about 7 years apart from graduating, so we never met each other until we started masterminding. And long story short, we ended up meeting through his sister, who was actually a year younger than me. Really interesting how that happens, how small the world is. But Garrett Jones went to Texas A&M University and graduated from Rice with an MBA. He's worked for years in alternative finance, private equity space before recognizing and wanting to be an entrepreneur and operator of businesses. In his personal life is one where he is passionate on mental conditioning and started to grow and really didn't take effect until roughly 10 years ago. So he's taken a lot of time to get around to it. I get that. New world, everything's changing completely. So don't feel bad if you're in that same situation where maybe you're a little bit older that happens. But he always knew that he wanted more, and it knew he was doing wasn't going to get him there. Not specifically talking about money, but in the interim, he went through a divorce and then the heartache of attempting to start several businesses on his own, which failed. And he's had numerous failures because he didn't create a standard of life that allowed him to succeed. And that's why today we're going to talk about core values and aligning them with your belief system. But before we get into that, Garrett, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Man, you took the words right out of my mouth, Philip. I mean, I had notes written down and everything. That was a great intro. I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking some time to allow me to come on your podcast for sure. Yeah, man, core values, aligning them to your belief system. And as you mentioned, over the last 10, 15 years, we all have ups and downs. We all have failures and successes. And I think a lot of us, the absolute majority, if I'm being honest, we rest our laurels on our successes. And at the end of the day, that's not going to be good enough to get you where you want to go. And that's kind of something that I did. I came out of getting my Rice MBA. I felt like I was in hog heaven. I got through this amazing top tier MBA program. And from that perspective, I was like, man, what's next? Worked for years and years in private equity and alternative finance for some very large firms. And I recognized, like you were saying, that I wanted to learn how to run my own business. It was the one thing that was missing from my resume as I wanted to continue to grow and develop as a leader, as a communicator, and realistically as a person. And not having that standard is what caused me to fail as time went on. What's interesting, as I started to study this world more through masterminding, talking to different individuals, and reading as many books as I could get my hands on, I recognized that I needed something behind that standard, more of a passion, more of what we call a burn. The burn is something that is, I'll read you a quote from Ben Newman, who is one of my personal coaches through my actual personal coach, Sean O'Brien, through the Uncommon Coaching Program. And the burn is what lights you up to believe anything is possible, right? It's the mindset that causes the person to fight on a different level, no matter what it is. You're creating a new standard. It's your burn, right? It's what's going to get you out of bed when you don't want to get out of bed. It's what's going to make you go do that workout when you don't want to do that workout. That's why I'm such a firm believer in 75 hard. It's the most monotonous BS program you can possibly put yourself through, but I guarantee its success. Just like the founder of that program, Andy Frisella, will guarantee that success. All you have to do is Google. It's free, but 99% of the people won't do the program because they always come up with some type of excuse here or there. And I just think that's kind of interesting because as they go through life, they're not getting what they want. Well, you're not putting in the work. You're not winning the day, right? You're not holding yourself to a higher standard that I think people should hold themselves to, which is ultimately going to translate into other areas of your life. Communication for Philip, right? And his clients, being a great leader, CEO, coach, father, husband, wife, mom, whatever, right? And I just think that's something that I've become more and more passionate about throughout the years.
Yeah. And I want to go back to the point that you made about with the 75 hard, a lot of people, they want to modify it just a little bit, like, because why does it doesn't make sense. Like, why do I need to take that picture? Why do I need to do this whole thing? Can I just do 40 minutes instead of 45 minutes? Do I have to do the outdoor workout? Like, why can't I just do 2 indoor workouts? And while, yeah, you could go ahead and do that, it's not what the program called for. And really, at the end of the day, with the program, it's about controlling what you can control. You can control that you go and do an outdoor workout. You can't control that it's going to be snowing or raining or 40 degrees or 120 degrees. You can't control those things. But what you can control is that action that you took with that outdoor workout. And too often we don't think about that when we're taking action on the things that we want to do in life outside of something like 75 hard. And what happens, and this gets ingrained into us, is, you know what? Oh, man, it's kind of hot outside today. Oh, it's raining. I'm just going to do an indoor workout instead. And you make this excuse, or you try and modify something. And when you modify something like that, even though it seems very little, and yes, a workout is not going to make or break your life. That's not what I'm saying. But it's by doing that little thing, your mind starts saying, you know what, I can make an excuse. Oh, I allowed myself to make an excuse that one time. I can go ahead and make it again. Oh, it didn't kill me that time. Like, I can go ahead and do it again and again. And then you look, and as we talked a little bit offline, when you're looking at the trees and you're not seeing the forest, it's hard to see that, man, you're a way off track now. You're sitting here trying to go and you're weaving in and out, but you're not going in the direction you really wanted to go, even though you kind of kept moving, kind of kept doing something, because you kept making up those excuses. And that's why the little monotonous things, you have to be monotonous. You have to be consistent, because if you're not, your life is going to get off course very easily.
Oh man, that's the greatest point ever, right? And that's the whole purpose behind doing something that's challenging. It's getting yourself uncomfortable. I don't want to do half the BS that we have to do when we're doing something challenging or going through a program like 75 hard. But Andy Frisella would tell you, and I completely agree with this, the work comes before the belief. In the discussion. I would like to believe I'm going to be a millionaire, or I'm going to believe that something is going to happen for me but I can't believe it into realism, right? I have to actually go out and do the work. And if you do the work and follow something to a T, to the program, in the instance of 75 hard, if you modify, you're allowing your mind to win. And you actually have more of a weak mind than you think, right? Well, I only worked out for 40 minutes today, or I didn't want to go outside because it was raining. Well, you failed. Just like you probably fail when you walk by that plate of fries when you're on a diet, or it's probably when you didn't turn in the assignment that was due at work on time. It might have been a day late, but you got it done, but it wasn't on time, right? You don't understand the impact that it has over the long period of time. And I think that's kind of interesting as time goes on. Again, you're holding yourself accountable. You should be having yourself held to a much higher standard. And that's what you have to do for yourself. That's why you have a high standard for yourself. And that's why, keeping that standard is going to be the ultimate thing in your life, right? And then as you make your standard your new way of life, set a new standard and then work your way up to it. Make that the new standard. Set a new standard, work your way up to it. Make that the new standard, and keep going. Over the course of time, those monotonous duties that you're doing will start to add up, right? And then next thing you know, over the course of the year, you've absolutely crushed the year, right? Yeah. And that's an interesting concept that a lot of people don't take to heart, when it's really a very simple process. Just do the work. The belief will come.
And something I just thought about, like a little story that you could think about, or analogy with this, is when you go to sleep, what do? You keep your eyes wide open, you just keep talking, you keep doing stuff? No. You lay down, whether it's on your stomach or your back, you close your eyes, you get silent, and you try not to think about anything. So you're pretending to be asleep, and then all of a sudden you just happen to be asleep. And it's the same thing with the goals that we're going after, or the person we are trying to become. We have to act as if we are that person, and eventually we will become that person. But it's about acting and taking action on that first. And I like that you bring you had something to say. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, no, I definitely agree with you in that section, Philip. Is because I heard a quote from Tim Grover when I saw him speak recently, and it just basically said, you can't excel at anything before you train your mind.
Mm.
You absolutely have to teach the mind to train the body. And the body doesn't mean physical. The body means, hey, my body's telling me I don't want to get off the couch today and go do that homework or go to work early or whatever. You have to train your mind first and get really strong mentally. And once you become obsessed through mental conditioning, a lot of these other things that used to be heartaches and headaches really just kind of become small nuances in your life. And you're like, okay, well, whatever. I just got to get it done. And well, okay, that's a good attitude to have. A lot of people think that's a negative attitude. I think that's a great attitude to have. God, I just got to go out there and do the work. Well, go do the work then. Let's get it done. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's about overcoming the emotion, because if you just have to wait till you're motivated or you feel great to go do something, you're not going to get very far. It has to be it's something you have to do unconditionally. It doesn't matter how you feel, within reason. Obviously, if you're on your deathbed, that's a little bit different. But if you're just, I don't really feel like doing it today, you got to do it anyways. If you want to go somewhere, you're going to have days where you don't want to do things.
Absolutely.
And I know we're about the same length of time in our marriage and everything. There's times where it's like you're in a fight with your wife and you're just like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to sit there and love her right now. I just want to leave her over there or just go take off. But you realize that's not what a good husband is. A good husband's going to stay there. A good husband may just be quiet at that moment, may not express a lot of love, but we're not showing hate either. It's still trying to show that love as much as possible. And it goes both ways. I know I'm not an easy person to love either for my wife. And I'm sure there's times where I annoy her to death. And the last thing she wants to do is something nice for me, yet she'll still do that. And so that's everything in life. There's times where we don't want to do it and we still have to do it anyways, because that's what we're supposed to do to be that person that we want to be, or be the person that we are as well. Because one of the core values for me is integrity. Like I am a person of integrity. As a core belief. I don't have it as my official core value, because I just feel like that's something that you should be. So I don't know. Anyways, but that's something for me. Integrity is a huge proponent of my life. And so I'm a man of my word. I'm going to do what I say. And in my vows, I said, I'm going to love you for better or worse till death do us part. And I'm going to do that. And there are times where it's like, this sucks. I don't want to do it, but I'm doing it anyways, because I made that commitment and I'm not giving up on that commitment.
Absolutely. No, that's a great way to look at it. Absolutely. Right. I think people just need to take a step back, especially in this crazy world we're living in, and find a little inspiration, right? To your audience, I would say, hey, reach out to Philip and ask him for some inspiration. He will provide it to you. Shoot me a DM and I will help you find that inspiration, right? Because again, I'm going to come back to the saying, the work comes before the belief. You have to get out there and start getting some wins in. You have to start out there and finding some things. And the possibilities are literally endless. For the group that I work with, so to that point in terms of coaching and moving through that space, I have found passion personally. I love to see people win and I love to see people succeed. And the only way I could, initially start helping people with that was by doing, again, back to 75 Hard. So I went to the pastor of my church a few years ago and said, hey, I want to lead a prayer group through 75 Hard. And because there's a lot of similarities between church and the underlying messages of what 75 Hard will produce for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, over the last 2 or 3 years, I've probably now coached over almost 50 people through the program. And I have some ridiculous wins. I'm talking people losing 20, 30 pounds, cancer survivors, people that are just got divorced, thought everything was over. They're coming out on the other side saying, man, I've never seen my life look this good. And I said, again, you just did the monotonous behavior and you focused on the outcome. You won the day, right?
Yeah.
And that's the absolute most positive thing you could do for yourself. When people ask me about going through a good coaching program or working with a mentor, I say, you have to actually dedicate yourself to get the outcome that you want. with 75 hard, if you do exactly what I say you need to do and follow the program to the T, I guarantee 100% success.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not charging people for this. This is through my church. I'm not charging people.
Yeah.
It's free on the internet. But guess what? Because if they don't have the coach to get on stage and speak with Philip Sessions, or they don't have the coach to create mental conditioning with myself, with 75 hard or another program I might put them through, they're never going to be successful. And you have to actually have that accountability aspect of it also to help coach and continue and push and push and push, right? No matter what their outcome or whatever their initial problem may be.
Yeah. And I don't want to say on the other side too, like even if you do these monotonous things and you don't get a result, you can figure out what was the thing that didn't get you that result.
Right.
And with something like 75 hard, if you really don't get a result, that's because you didn't really actually do the work. You just, you went through the motions, but but at least if you went through the motions of the same things every day for 75 days, you can figure out, okay, what thing were you not really trying that hard on? Right. Was it perhaps the diet? Were you really not actually on a proper diet? You called it a diet, but it just meant I'm only gonna have like one soda instead of no sodas or something. Like let's just call it something like that. Or I'm not really gonna push myself that hard, but I'm gonna do the workouts every day. Absolutely. You know, the 2 a day, but I'm just gonna kind of halfway do it because I'm doing 2 instead of 1, so I don't need to do as much and things like that. So because you've done this same consistent thing, you can then go back and say, okay, what things were working and what things weren't working, and then from there, fix one thing. That's another problem. Like people don't like to just do the same thing over and over and over again. But then when they figure out that something's not working, even if they were to do that, then they change everything. They don't just change one thing. They're like, I'm going to change everything because clearly this whole thing's not working. No, it's probably one thing that's not working. Or let's try one thing out. And if that doesn't change it, let's try something else out. But if you just keep changing things out, you're never going to know what's actually working and what's not working.
That's a great point from the perspective of people nowadays changing everything numerous times. And I think that also lies with the fact of like instant gratification, right? Or they're trying to hit success much quicker than what realistically takes place to hit success. You know, my personal mental coach and performance coach, Sean O'Brien, he has been working with me now for 3 years on that. And it took, I bet, the better part of 12 months to maybe 15 months. Now, he may have seen some wins with me, but internally, I was not seeing what I wanted to be a win or what I deemed to be a win, right? Yeah. And then I over the course of time, I was like, oh, shit, this is actually working out pretty well, right? I'm like, this is working, you know? So now I'm leaning on him harder to push even further because he got me to like calm down slightly, slow down, and focus on one thing, even if it was a monotonous behavior. Hey, Garrett, do this, do this, do that. Why haven't you done this? Do this, do that. Why haven't you done this? And then I would do it. And then once I checked that box and it became like a habit, then I could move on to the next thing. In today's world, we're all looking for almost instant gratification, mainly due to social media and whatever else you want to blame it on, right? But my coach, again, Sean O'Brien, I couldn't thank the guy enough. And now he's become a great friend. I call him whenever I need something, on top of all the coaching that we do with each other. And that's something I will take to the grave for sure. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I feel like the changes we do in our life really comes down to the fact that we haven't set a standard for ourselves. And so I really want to dive into how you talked about that, how you didn't have this standard for yourself in your life. And that's why you didn't have a lot of success. Because I think we can extrapolate a lot of great nuggets out of that. So tell us like this journey from you where you didn't have any kind of standard of living, and then you started to create that standard and how your life changed from setting that standard for yourself.
Yeah. And again, I think that came back to being seduced by success, which I had, fairly early on when I worked in alternative finance and getting my MBA, right? I thought I was going to be on top of the world and it was only going to be a linear line up, right? Well, It's not linear by any stretch. It's ups and downs every day, especially now in the entrepreneurial world. And once I started to recognize that something was off, I think it took enough times of getting kicked in the teeth where I was like, okay, I need to start figuring this out. So I slowed down. I started reading books. That was step one. And again, now I'm an avid reader. I've read hundreds and hundreds of books on the topic of mental conditioning. And I still don't feel like I'm where I need to be. But that was what started the thought process of creating a new standard for my daily life so that I could always progress in a positive manner. The seduction of success was by far one of the biggest downfalls that I had, without a doubt. Now, I had some other things that took place. I was going through a divorce. I was just kind of in a shit world. I'll be straight honest with you, right? But as time went on, I was reading more, starting to educate myself more. I started to see the path of what was going to be an easier path. I guess you could even call it the path of less resistance, but it was a much longer path than I wanted it to be. And that was okay. I just had to swallow that pill. And I think a lot of people are now seeing that success isn't overnight, and don't be seduced by whatever success you do have, and keep pushing and moving forward. That was my ultimate, like, real thought process behind getting this started and trying to, better myself, better my life.
Yeah, it almost sounds like you were kind of filling a void as well. Even though you may have had some success, there was still something that just felt like there was almost a void. Like you didn't have like a solid ground. Yeah. Is that kind of right in saying that?
Yeah, 100%, right? Yeah, absolutely. And God works in mysterious ways, right? It all came at the right time when it needed to come, and will continue to do so. It may not be what I want it to be and when I want it to be, but it did, right? My wife came along at the perfect time. Opportunities came along at the perfect time. And that also means I had to cut some people out of my life. And I think that's a flip side argument that not a lot of people take to heart as well. Now I've gotten really good at it, because if you're not going to be someone that I can learn from, or someone that I can help, or wants to grow, I mean, realistically, what are we doing here? Right. How am I helping you, and how are you helping me? I don't have time for that, But in terms of creating that standard on a daily aspect of life, that's what I'm so focused on right now. And that's where it's going to get anybody to the next level.
Yeah. So how can we create a standard for our life? Maybe we have a little bit, but we haven't really solidified that standard for ourselves. What are some things that we can do to help solidify that standard for ourselves?
I think you got to do something challenging right out of the gate, and you got to stick to your guns. Whether that's doing 75 hard or some type of other challenge that creates mental fortitude, grit, perseverance, passion, you have to do something that you absolutely don't want to do. You need to get comfortable being uncomfortable, without a doubt, if you're going to do anything worthwhile in this life. That goes without saying. If you don't believe that yet, there will come a time where you will believe that, and that will be your answer.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'll add to it that you need to figure out what some of the priorities are in your life. What are the actual important things? When you think of your life and the person that you want to be, who is that? And I know personally, I focus a lot on business, but at the end of the day, like my faith, my family, my personal health, those all come before the business. And I truly believe if I take care of those things, the business will end up taking care of itself. Yes, absolutely. I still need to do stuff with it, but having those priorities in place really helps me with setting what is that standard. So one of the standards for me is being a family man, another one being a godly man. So some of those things kind of help set that standard. And of course, there's more in depth with that, but figuring out what your priorities will help you with setting that standard as well. Instead of, oh, well, this sounds kind of good. Like, oh, that sounds kind of good. No, like what are those priorities in your life, or what do you want those priorities to be? If maybe you're not at that point where you are in a good church home, that you do have a marriage, things like that, but maybe you want to be married, maybe you do want to find a good church home. Like, what does that look like for you? Just like we talked about at the beginning, and then start taking action towards that thing. Start being that thing, and soon you will be that thing.
That's a great way of looking at it, right? You absolutely have to go down that road to do something that's worthwhile. I mean, you're saying it exactly. We're essentially saying the exact
over. Yeah.
Right.
And so how would you translate that then, or how have you translate that then to teams? Because I know as leaders and whether it be the leader of your household, be a leader of an actual team in a corporate company or your own business, translating those standards, and not that you're trying to push that standard on other people, but there is some kind of company standard that comes up or some kind of standard within your household. Now, how do you help instill that standard as the leader for those that you are leading?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You have to recognize who is around you, know your audience, right?
Mm.
I think that a lot of people, probably again the majority, don't have the mental capacity in this subject that we do, but everybody has the opportunity to jump on board and learn more and create a new standard for themselves. They have the ability to challenge themselves, whether it's your wife or your daughter or someone that works for you. As the leader, it's interesting. I heard a quote from another one of my most favorite mentors. I've had the pleasure of meeting and spending about a minute of my time with him, was Ed Milet. You may have heard this quote, and I wrote it down because I thought this was really interesting. It says, "It takes a leader with vision to help people with dreams." Right?
Yeah.
Let's say that one more time. It takes a leader with vision to help people with dreams, and that's a direct quote from Ed Milet. Maybe he stole it from someone else. All these ideas are stolen, by the way. None of this is original copyrighted. So that being said, what he's talking about is whoever you're working around, married to, family member, one of your employees, they may not know how to get to where they want to go. They have these big aspirations. They have these big dreams. As the leader, it's your job to help facilitate that dream. Provide them with a path. Give them a couple of easy layups initially to help build that confidence, whether that's a big challenge or a small challenge. And over the course of time, you'll start to see them take their own path and do what you're asking them to do without really having to ask them what to do. And I think that's a really good way to handle that perspective. For instance, I have a general manager who works at my car dealership, and this woman's a rock star. It didn't take me long to kind of coach her up on the processes and procedures because I knew she had big dreams and she performed. But I will every now and then I'll try to coach her up on little bitty things here and there that will ultimately not help me, but they're going to help her life. And if I know if it's helping her, then there's going to be some type of way it's going to help me, right? Yeah. It's going to be a definite give and take, whether you're looking at it from the perspective of a selfish aspect, right? Or you're truly just doing it out of the goodness of your own heart. It really doesn't matter because at the end of the day, you're still helping that person.
Yeah, I like that. And I completely agree with you. If you start helping people, it does turn into actually helping you.
Right.
With the caveat, I always like to say with the caveat that you're not intentionally just trying to help somebody so you get something back. Like say I help you because you know Ben Newman, and I'm just hoping that basically you're like you talk me up to Ben Newman, and all of a sudden Ben Newman and I become buddies. Like that's not the way it works. Like I should just help you just to help you, and then through that, because I've helped you so much, you want to be able to reciprocate somehow. Maybe that's where that connection comes in, and just using that as an example and everything. And either Ed or Andy said something similar. What you said. They talked about as you're building a company, the people that are underneath you, their dreams have to fit inside of yours. If your dream, let's just use money just for a number, for example. If your dream is to have the company be worth $1 million,
right,
but somebody in your company wants to make $10 million a year, well, that doesn't quite work out because they want to make more than you want the company to be worth. And so they're going to end up leaving. So if you want to have A players, you need to have dreams so big and a vision so big that their dreams, their vision fits inside of yours. And that's where they'll want to stick around with you, which really goes back to the belief system, the standards of life that we create. The people that we are leading, they need to be able to see that they can fit in within your standard. Maybe they don't want everything that you want. Maybe they're not going to be as disciplined as you are, but because they can see themselves within inside what your standard of life is, they'll want to follow you.
Totally agree. That's a great way of putting it. And my mentor, Sean O'Brien, he talks about that all the time with, breaking it down into small steps and understanding how to recognize the goals or dreams of whatever that may be. He has helped me in the perspective of essentially writing it down and breaking it into these little nuancy things that I need to do, but behind a big number, but behind something that I know is like this big, hairy, audacious goal, a BHAG or a WIG, wildly important goal, and then backing into it however I may do that. And I think that's kind of interesting because it if you translate that into your personal life, you translate that into a career as an entrepreneur, or even if you're not an entrepreneur, but you have people that work under you, you can help them achieve whatever their dreams are just by breaking it down into very simple processes. And I think that is going to be, very big for those who don't see this as something that's interesting for the most part, but I promise you that it works.
Yeah, that makes me think of Zig Ziglar, where he says, if you help enough people get what they want, eventually you'll get what you want.
Right.
So it's all of that. And I'll use the caveat again. You have to just be helping them just to help them because you want to, not because you think, oh, if I help enough people, like Zig says, I'm going to get what I want. No, you have to be genuine with helping people, and it will come back to you in one way, shape, or form for sure.
And I know that's exactly why you do what you do with your podcast and then also through your coaching platform and helping people become better public speakers and better communicators within their organizations and also at, in the family perspective. That's huge, right? It helps the people ultimately, which will someday help you, right?
Yeah.
And I'm the exact same way. That's why I volunteer my time to help people create even just the smallest amount of mental fortitude and grit at my church via 75 Hard. It's the only program I know that works. I'm like, well, we could create our own and call it something else. But I was like, this works. We're just going to do it. We're going to follow a simple formula. If you do the work, the belief will come later. And that's
Yeah, exactly right. So tell us a bit more about your mental and performance coaching that you do. I know you're kind of thinking about doing the coaching and everything, but tell us a little bit more about that because somebody may be interested in talking with you about that because it's such an important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate you asking. I think it's, if somebody was wanting to reach out, I'm more than happy to help them. I would have to run them through definitely a couple of questionnaires just to see where they're at, what their end goals are. And then we're going to create a plan or a process around that. I'm most likely going to put them through some type of physical aspect, whether that's in 75 Hard or some type of other area of physical conditioning, because it's all related. And I don't think a lot of people look at it as a related process. If you're fit, you're going to be mentally sharp. If you're mentally sharp, you're most likely going to be fit. And fit doesn't mean you're in the gym bench pressing 225 and can stand on stage as a bodybuilder. That's not what that means. I have people that come through my program at our church that may be slightly overweight. Maybe they're ex-athletes, maybe they're somewhere in between. And if they get it done, guaranteed they're going to be in much better shape physically and mentally at the end of the program than they would at the start of the program. Essentially, I'm going to build something around them, whether, whatever that may mean for that specific person. But I can guarantee that they will be better off 60, 90, 120 days, a year later than they were when they started. It depends on what the goal is, because you have to be an optimist. I like to say I'm an optimist with realistic expectations, right? I'm not going to weigh 225 in 30 days. That's just not possible for my body type, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be optimistic that if that's the goal for me to get up to that type of size, or maybe it's to make $1 million in one calendar year. Okay. Is that going to happen this year? Maybe, but probably not, right? Not giving away too much, right? And so you have to set a realistic goal, but be very optimistic about it. Maybe that's a 5-year plan. Maybe that's a 10-year plan. Okay, well, let's back into that and let's see how that works and how it shapes out. Any way you slice it, if I don't have the answer, I know someone that does. Guaranteed, I know plenty of people that do. Similar to you, right? I would refer people. I'm going to refer people your way because I already have a couple of people that I know for a fact need coaching in communication, speaking, online engagement, etc. And I think that's very huge, especially in the corporate world as well as the personal world.
Yeah, I agree there too. Right, but Garrett, man, this has been awesome. If people want to reach out to you, where's the best place for them to reach out? Because I know we just mentioned the coaching, so I want to ask that first before we go into the last question. But where should they reach out to you?
I would definitely say LinkedIn. They can reach me on LinkedIn. Is a great place. I'm always on LinkedIn or Instagram. Instagram is I'm always on LinkedIn or Instagram. It's fine.
Okay, awesome. Well, we'll have that in the show notes. But Garrett, the last question of the podcast. If you could only share one message for the rest of your life, what would that message be?
Same message I've been sharing with everybody and throughout my church coaching group. All I want you to do is get up every single day. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about yesterday. Just win the day. That's all you're doing. Focus on today's actions. Give it your 100% best. Give it your absolute best. Win the day. And if you do that every day going forward, you don't have to win every single day. But if you win the majority, guess what? You're winning.
Man, I like that. That's such a powerful message right there. And for those of you, just to make it more of a communication message there, if you want to get better at communication, it starts with one video every single day without fail, and watch your transformation as a public speaking person and communicator, because your message matters. So you should get that message out one video at a time.